Hey, what's up, America? Back at it with some more true facts. Now, today I want to talk to you guys about Trump and the insurrection act that he's putting out there. Now, this is a heads up because this is a form of martial law. Yes, a form of martial law. That is what this is. Now, I'm going to take you into a report from Progress. White House confirmed Trump is considering using the military to remove immigrants. White House Deputy Press Secretary Hogan greatly downplayed reports Friday that the Trump administration was considering invoking the Insurrection Act to remove immigrants from the country, but he didn't rule out that it was still on the table. There are lots of tools at President Donald Trump's disposal. Jeatley said, speaking with Fox and Friends, we haven't used them all and we're looking at ways to protect the American people. Jeatley's comments were received warmly by the live studio audience, which applauded about the idea of using the military to force out undocumented immigrants at gunpoint. That would be great, host Brian Academy responded. Last time we used the Insurrection Act, I believe that was the LA riot where the military came in and said we are going to need military presence there. The military is there at the border, but they can't do as much as they want. 60 people were killed and 2,383 were injured in the 1992 Los Angeles riots, referenced Friday, after police and military forces were deployed to snuff out riots and protests against the acquittal of several police officers involved in the brutal beating of a black man, Rodney King, whose arrest 1 year earlier was captured on video. Jeatley's comment come one day after Trump announced his new immigration plan, and hours after conservation's outlet, the Daily Caller, reported that Trump plans to invoke the Insurrection Act to remove undocumented immigrants from the country using military force. The report cited multiple senior administration officials who said the White House was doing the Insurrection Act. Under the Insurrection Act of 1807, the president has the authority to use military force within the country's border, but only in the very specific instance of an insurrection, domestic violence, unlawful combinations, or conspiracy. It can also be invoked in disaster scenarios, but only if there is such widespread domestic violence that local authorities cannot maintain public order. Listen up. The presence of undocumented immigrants in the country is no way meet these qualifications. One of the officials who spoke to the Daily Center seems to recognize that Trump will surely face legal challenges if he actually tried to invoke the act. But they were also optimistic that the Supreme Court will side with Trump as it did in upholding its Muslim ban. Trump seemed to reinforce the idea that would invoke military forces in a tweet Friday morning in which he described building up removal forces. Now, this is the actually tweet that Donald Trump actually tweeted on May 17, 2019, and it stated, all people that are illegally coming into the United States now will be removed from our country at a later date as we build up our removal forces and as the laws are changed. Please do not make yourself too comfortable. You will be leaving soon. This is his actually tweet that he tweeted on his tweet on Twitter. That is crazy. Now back into the report. And please know that all the articles that I'm going over with you guys today, I am going to leave a link in the description so that you can go and check this information out for yourself. See it with your own eyes. not my words. Back at it. All people that are legally coming into the United States now will be removed from our country as at a later date as we build up our removal forces and the laws are changed, he wrote. Please do not make yourself too comfortable. You will be leaving soon, end quote. The Insurrection Act has never been invoked to address immigration, but it is used throughout history. Almost always been connected to racial tensions in the country. You got that? It was later used by President George H.W. Bush in response to the admissions Los Angeles riots. And in 1957, when President Dwight Eisenhower used federal troops to enforce the desegregation at Arkansas public schools. That is his whole main objective, is to get the military out on the street, because martial law is forming. It is forming whether you see it or not, believe it or not. Look around you. Martial law is forming. Now let's take a closer look into some history of the Insurrection Act. And I'm going to go to a report that was put out by the New Yorker.com. Okay, and it states, as it becomes more possible to play what President Bush calls the blame game about the unnecessary disastrous effect of Hurricane Katrina on New Orleans, it also becomes clear that the game divides fairly neatly into two parts, before and after. Before involved storm defense and enhanced despite clear warning of their wetlands not protected, evacuation buses not engaged, and federal emergency management FEMA units not deployed to the Gulf Coast in advance. After is about the week that begun with the hurricane hitting and ending with the Supreme and the Convention Center National Guard troops on the street. Supplies available and these leads branches repaired, and that included days after endless day of intensive televised misery in between. Most of what is likely to be known about before is already on the public record. After is a more shadowy matter, and the scrap of details about that have merged so far, making a puzzling and incomplete picture. The Bush administration realized after the storm what it should have realized before it, that the state and local authorities in Louisiana were not going to be able to handle the hurricane's aftermath efficiently. Apparently, the administration tried to persuade the governor of Louisiana, Kathleen Blanco, to issue an official request that the federal government take control of the Louisiana National Guard and the New Orleans police, but she refused out of pride or mistrust or a desire to maintain some degree of control. The administration considered sending active duty federal troops to New Orleans to do what the National Guard and the police could not: make the streets and the evacuation centers safe and decent, and decided not to. Wherever it's failing before the hurricane hit, the federal government could have greatly lessened the disaster if it had acted immediately afterward as a direct enforcer of the law. People suffered and died because it did not. All the backing and forth about the powers of federal, state, and local government has a long history that explains a lot, not only about the aftermath of the hurricane, but only the underlying conditions in New Orleans. One moment. So that shocked a slump of television viewers. Article 1 of the United States Constitution gives the federal government the power to suppress insurrections. This has always been a touchy subject, especially in the South and most especially during the Reconstruction period, after the biggest insurrection American history had been successfully suppressed. The Insurrection Act of 1807 outlines the script that the administration evidently wanted Governor Blanco to follow. A governor asks the president to federalize local law enforcement in order to suppress insurrection. The president issued a proclamation ordering the insurgents to disperse. That the cavalry rise to the rescue. But the president has the option of sending in troops without being asked when the law isn't being enforced or rights of class of people are being denied, which was clearly the case in New Orleans, not just because crime was rampant, but because so many people were trapped in hellish conditions. In 1992, President George H.W. Bush, who liked to build alliances before invading, sent federal troops to quell the Los Angeles riot after the governor requested him to in 1957 and 1963. However, President Eisenhower and Kennedy sent troops to the South to enforce the civil rights of African Americans without invitation. It is no incident that all three invocations of the Insurrection Act had to do with the American diploma. Throughout our history, the moment of greatest contention about federal powers have invoked race. The Reconstruction period ended with a protracted and bloody conflict over the question of deploying federal troops in the South. In the southern states, with the largest black population, organized terror groups arose that would do whatever it took, including murder, to ensure election victories by the Democratic Party, which was dominated by the present former Confederates. The best means of suppressing the terrorists and ensuring free election was to send in the Army. Congress made the use of troops easier or harder depending on who was in power in Washington. Laws passed in 1870 and 1871, the heyday both of the Ku Klux Klan and the radical republicanism, made it easier to use troops in the South. The post-Reconstruction Act of 1878, an attempt to eviscerate the Insurrection Act by requiring an act of Congress before federal troops could be used, made it more difficult. The issue of federal intervention and the issue of whether freed slaves and their descendants will fully be citizens were essentially the same. Reconstruction ended with the withdrawal of federal troops in 1877. They were withdrawn supposedly to restore normal governance in the former Confederate states, but the consequence was that those states, once there was nobody on hand to force them to obey the Constitution, took full citizenships away from African Americans. No state saw more conflict over federal powers than Louisiana. A massacre of politically active blacks in New Orleans in the summer of 1866 helped set in motion the passage of constitutional amendments that made it legal to deny civil rights and the rights to vote to anyone on the basis of race. President Grant several federal troops on the Red River Valley after a notorious massacre there in 1873. And 1874. The federal troops was ordered to New Orleans after a Democratic white militia tried to overthrow the Republican state government in 1875. Federal troops marched onto the floor of the state legislature to restore the Republicans to power after another coup detached by the Democrats. This last intervention was a pivotal event, not because it enforced order once and for all, but because it horrified the nation, which in those days was not at all sure that it was in favor of the Negro rights. Before long, federal intervention in the South in the name of civil rights became a taboo, so absolute that no president violated it for more than 3/4 of a century. 1 second. This is not ancient history. The New Orleans ghetto that America got and look at after the hurricane grew up during the time when the South had successfully resisted the federal government. This is what they're trying to do, you guys. They're trying to martial law. That is what the Insurrection Act will be. It will be a form of martial law. Look it up, you guys, for yourself. Trump is bringing in martial law. You guys need to get prepared and ready for this because the power grid is going to go out. It's all planned. Power grid is going to go out. Food and water is going to disappear. Money is going to go low in value. Food prices are going to rise. It's going to get tough. Inflation is going to rise. Food is going to disappear. People is going to be murdering, robbing, anything to survive in your hood. These people is going to be doing whatever they can to survive in the hood when this all goes down. You don't want to be in the cities when this stuff goes down because it's going to be crazy. Pay attention to what the president is doing. Look at the laws he is setting in place. Look around you. It is going down. And if you don't believe, Trump is going to make you a believer by the end of 2019, going into 2020. There's a lot of stuff that's going to transpire between the end of this year and next year. So you guys need to get prepared. However, that's my report for you guys today. If you like the information that I share with you guys, please like, share, and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell so you can that you can be updated on every video that I make, and I make them throughout the week. So you guys, this is very informational stuff that you guys want to look into, and it will help you and your family life. So you know what to do. Like, share, and subscribe to everybody you know. And make sure you hit that button. And I'm out.